Today at noon Eastern over on Jaguars 7, we'll have an all-new baseball video out about the World Baseball Classic and Japan. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch the most recent video. And now, on with our feature presentation. The quarterback kneel down. No matter what team you play for, and no matter what offensive scheme you run, every single team has this play in its playbook. It's the play where the quarterback takes the ball directly under center and immediately goes to the ground, taking a knee and losing a yard or two, giving himself up in the process. The kneel down can serve one of three purposes, depending on the situation in the game. In some extremely rare cases, if the losing team is down by a ton of points and it's late in the fourth quarter, they might run this play just to get out of there with no injuries, so as not to risk anything whatsoever with the game completely out of hand. There's no point if you're down 42-10 with 8 seconds left and the ball at your own 10-yard line at running a play. Nothing good can come from that. The second purpose is if it's the end of the half and you just take a knee to go into the halftime break exactly where you are, not risking the possibility of turning the ball over and giving up points and losing some more momentum. But for the most part, in about 95% of cases, the third and the main purpose and utilization of the kneel down is for the winning team to use it at the end of the game. Let's not risk anything with the lead. The game is won. The other team doesn't have the requisite time left or timeouts left to stop the clock and get the ball back barring a mistake or a clock stoppage on your end. Just take the ball and fall down and keep that clock running. There is no point in trying to run an actual play and run up the score or risk turning the ball over. Just take a knee, celebrate a hard-earned victory, and get out of there. And odds are, when you think of the kneel down, you think of a very similar situation, where the winning team will take a knee with under 2 minutes left as a commemoration of their win. Whether it's a minute, 30 seconds left, 2 minutes left, 90 seconds left, the final play, whatever you want to call it, odds are, when you think of the kneel, that's the moment in the game that you're thinking of. I can assure you, however, that you don't think of this situation. You don't think of a team taking a knee with 5 minutes left in the game. However, as bizarre as that might seem, where a team takes a knee with plenty of time left, as in a third of the fourth quarter left to complete, during this game right here in 1995 between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Detroit Lions, that's exactly what happened. And whereas the quarterback kneel down is usually the most uneventful play in all of football, on this day, it was anything but that. In fact, it was the main story, because the controversy that came out of this play was something to behold. Because this is the story behind what might just be, considering the circumstances, the most controversial and disrespectful kneel down in the history of the NFL. Before I talk about the controversy in question and what the reaction was after this kneel down, we need some context to understand how the game was going, as well as the events that transpired prior to this. And before I go any further, by controversial kneel down, I mean controversial by the team doing the kneeling. Obviously, we've had situations like the Giants-Buccaneers game in 2012 and the Jaguars-Seahawks game in 2017 where it got ugly because the defensive team controversially tried to get the ball back and maybe play a little bit dirty. However, there was never any controversy about the team doing the kneeling. By controversial kneel down, I'm strictly referring to the team calling that play in the first place. And with all that in mind, let's talk about this game and the absolutely bizarre nature of what wound up transpiring on the field on this day. It's December 17th, 1995. It's week 16 of the NFL season, and we have a big interconference game on our hands between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Detroit Lions, in what is the first ever meeting between these two cat teams. While the game meant nothing to the Jaguars outside of pride, as they were an abysmal 3-11 and were slumping heavily in their first season in the NFL, having lost 6 straight, and having not won a game in nearly 2 months, for the Lions, this game was absolutely massive. After starting the season 3-6 and looking out of it, with head coach Wayne Fonz on the hottest of hot seats, somehow, the Lions enter this game not just on a 5-game winning streak, and not just entered above 500 with an 8-6 record, but entered with a chance, if a few results bounced their way, to end the week having clinched a playoff spot. One of the pieces of the equation that had to happen in order to do this, however, was defending their home field at the Silverdome and defeating Jacksonville. And as you're able to tell from these highlights, yeah, that wasn't an issue by any means. As when you've got a red-hot team going up against an ice-cold expansion team, and you've got two teams going in completely opposite directions, you've got a pretty good feeling as to how this game is going to turn out. What followed was one of the most dominant performances in the history of the Lions, and a game for the Jaguars that, even nearly 3 decades later, might remain the absolute worst game that the team has ever played. Don't get me wrong, there are absolutely some contenders for the crown of ineptitude where the team just didn't show up. From their 2009 shutout loss against Seattle, to their 2012 game against Houston where the team mustered up just 117 yards of total offense, to their 2013 season opener against Kansas City, where the Jaguars somehow didn't cross their own 37-yard line until there were 5 minutes left in the game. However, this one against the Lions in 1995 might take the cake, because everything about this game for Jacksonville, as you can very clearly tell, was ugly with a capital U. Through the first 55 minutes of this game, the Lions led at 44-0 and had outgained the Jaguars 394 to 161 in total yardage, picking up nearly 250% of their total yards. With the exception of one drive in the second quarter, Detroit managed to score points every single time they touched the ball. The Jaguars turned the ball over 5 times while failing to force any turnovers of their own, and at one point in the second quarter, the Jaguars had 3 straight drives and 4 drives out of 5, and with a turnover. Only once through the first 55 minutes did the Jaguars cross Detroit's 35-yard line. And when I say that the Jags could get nothing going offensively, I truly mean it, as starting quarterback Steve Beuerlein had a day to forget, going 10 for 21 with 115 net passing yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a passer rating of 29.2, which is worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. Eventually, Beuerlein got benched, and even when the Lions pulled their starters and took out guys like starting quarterback Scott Mitchell and running back Barry Sanders, they were still scoring at will and moving down the field with ease. It was one of those games where the Lions could have run any play they wanted to, and it wouldn't have mattered, because Jacksonville would not have found a way to stop it. That's how inept the Jaguars were on this day, and how good the Lions were on the flip side. And with roughly 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and the Lions leading 44-0 with their backups in, like running back Ron Rivers for Barry Sanders and quarterback Don Majkowski, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, in for Scott Mitchell, Detroit was faced with a 3rd and 12 situation on Jacksonville's 20-yard line. At this point, with the game completely wrapped up, seeing as it would take multiple acts of God and then some to blow a 44-point, 6-possession lead with 5 minutes and change left, the goal for the Lions was quite simply to take home the win and get out of there injury-free. There was no need to continue to do anything else and take any more chances. No point in calling any more plays. No point in trying a field goal and risking something there. And obviously, you can't punt the ball from the red zone, because I don't even know how that would work. So Lions head coach Wayne Fonz decided to do something that you never see, and that raised a ton of eyebrows throughout the league and throughout all the people watching this game. Because on 3rd and 12, with a whole 5 minutes left, he ordered this play in.
As the Lions can look up and do a little scoreboard watching for their playoff fake, Majkowski takes a knee on 3rd down and 12.
And then, on 4th down, he did it again.
And it's at least in the Fonts rule, and on 4th down they take a knee again. And so now the ball will go over to Jacksonville.
Now, on one hand, there is definitely a sportsmanship aspect to not wanting to run up the score. You're up 44-0, and there's no reason to continue to pile it on, because the risk of doing so is just not worth the reward. No point in creating bad blood or anything like that, and no point in risking anything from an injury standpoint. That's why a ton of teams in that situation will just run out the clock, or try their best to at least. Most teams, if faced with that situation, would call a running play on 3rd and 12, and would then call another running play on the 4th down play. But to do this, to take a knee, to just take the ball and go to the ground, on the other hand, that might show even less sportsmanship and respect. This was Fonts and Company saying, "We've got the game won. We did everything we had to do. We feel pity for you. The only way you're stopping us is if we stop ourselves. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're not even going to try here. We'll just give you the ball, no questions asked." In many ways, this was more embarrassing than how the Lions continued to call actual plays. And afterwards, the Jaguars were furious with just about everything, but in particular, with how the game ended. Head coach Tom Coughlin said that he was embarrassed, and that the whole situation with Mikowski taking a knee and Fonts calling off the horses with 5 minutes left was humiliating. Safety Harry Colon said, "There was no reason of them to do anything else. They had already proven that they could do whatever they wanted to do offensively." And perhaps no one was angrier and more livid at Fonts and the Lions than guard Sean Bowens, who said on the situation, "That's embarrassing, but that's Wayne's way." That is just saying that they could get some more first downs and some more points, but they felt sorry for us. That's worse than scoring the points. This was the equivalent of when you played youth soccer and the game got so out of hand that the coach ordered the team, no matter what, to not score, or made up arbitrary rules like you had to make sure every player touched the ball in the possession, or had to use your weak foot before you could shoot the ball. The only difference is that this wasn't at the youth sports level. This was on football's biggest stage with professionals in the NFL. And even members of the Lions organization called the act disrespectful, with Jim Brandstatter, the color commentator for the Lions on their radio network, saying on what Fonts did, "In a lot of ways, that's more embarrassing than someone piling on the points." Unfortunately, we never heard what Fonts had to say about this, since neither he nor any reporter asked him about it in the post-game press conference, seeing as most of the questions were centered around the Lions possibly clinching a playoff spot and their strong play. However, there was considerable outrage and confusion around the league about the stunt that Fonts pulled with 5 minutes left. Getting scored on is one thing. Getting the score run up on you, if you even want to call it that, is one thing. But for the other team to just flat out say, "We're done, and we're just going to give you the ball back and take a knee because we feel sorry for you," that's something else entirely. The victory formation is usually taken after the 2-minute warning, not with 5 whole minutes left in the contest like we saw during this game. Whether you want to call this Fonts' attempt at not getting anyone hurt, or Fonts' attempt at wanting to show mercy, is up to you. Whether you think this move makes sense, or is classless or disrespectful, is up to you as well. But whatever your thoughts are on it, we've never really seen a situation like it since. Because on this day in 1995, the only thing that could stop the Lions from moving the ball was quite literally the Lions not even trying to move the ball. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.